Welcome to Reproduction, Parenthood and the Art World. This is the third talk in the series. The starting point for this started quite a few years ago for me, actually. About 2017, I first came up with the idea of looking at how parents and artists, how they manage to work. I don't have children myself, so it was a bit of a grey area for me, and I really just wanted to learn more about how they actually managed to do it. It's taken until now for that to come to fruition, and there's a few reasons for that, and probably one of the biggest ones has been the pandemic, and sort of that blurring of private and public lives as we've been using Zoom. So it's been quite interesting to see. So we've got 3 speakers this evening, which is a bit of a change because we usually just have 2. So we've got Liz West and Mark Devereux, who'll be speaking first, and then we'll be handing over to Lauren McLaughlin. So I will just introduce first speakers. So Liz West is a British artist who is known for a wide range of works, from the intimate to the monumental. Using a variety of materials and exploring the use of light, she blurs the boundaries between sculpture, architecture, design and painting to create works that are both playful and immersive. She's been commissioned worldwide by institutions and organisations. Some of them include the Natural History Museum, London Design Festival, Paris Fashion Week and Milan Design Week, to name just a few. And she is in conversation with her partner Mark, who has 15 years of experience working in the art sector. He specialises in artist professional development, curation, production and project management. And in 2013, he set up Mark Devereux Projects, where he nurtures early career artists, curating exhibitions, producing participatory events, facilitating professional development programmes, and forging partnerships with organisations across the UK. And they will be talking about how they work as a couple, both being self-employed. They're going to talk about their own personal experiences, as well as Mark and his role as a mentor. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. It's lovely to be here on this sunny, lovely spring evening. At last, spring has sprung. I'm going to just talk briefly about what I do. I know you've just covered it pretty much there, Andrea. And then Mark will just talk for a few minutes. And then we just thought we were just going to have a conversation about pros and cons, the positives and negatives of being parents to a nearly 5-year-old. So my work is based around the mediums of colour and light. So I use those 2 ethereal phenomena to create often site-specific and large-scale works. So I will always do site visits. Before the pandemic, I was travelling monthly, I would say, to different places all around the world for exhibitions, artist talks, or site visits, meetings. And it's interesting how the pandemic has changed things, because obviously, like, you don't have to do that travelling. And you know, I did a talk to an audience of 150 people in Chile last night, whereas before the pandemic, when that talk was first organised, they wanted me to get on a plane for 16 hours and go to Chile for a half an hour's talk. So what's the sense in this? I really miss seeing the world, but it hasn't stopped my works travelling the world. And if you are interested in seeing what I do, there's one of my kind of best known pieces is coming to Wigan in the winter, so that's kind of northwest, and there's permanent works in Manchester, London, Liverpool, Bury. Check it out on my website. Mark and I met through our kind of individual practices. So I moved to Manchester in 2011. Always loved Manchester as a city and always thought of myself being there. I thought the art scene was kind of somewhere I could fit into. And I met Mark around that same time, who was running Blank Media Collective as the director. It was a voluntary organisation. I applied to be part of one of your exhibitions, and you liked my work, and then you liked me. So here we are, and now there's a ring on it. So that's how we're together. We got married in 2014, and then we had Francis in 2017. Yeah. And it's been a roller coaster, but we'll come on to that. Your go.
Yeah, so I'm Mark. I run Mark Devereux projects. Liz is also a director of Mark Devereux projects, as well as Jack Welsh. And in short, we're a curatorial and artist development organisation working with artists all across the UK and internationally to support their developing practices. So very much tailored support through curatorial projects, collaborating to create and realise exhibitions, performance events, loads of different activities that really the artists want to achieve. Alongside that, we also offer one-to-one mentoring sessions for artists, online courses, physical courses, workshops, loads of different kind of things around artist development. My background is as an artist, so I studied photography and fine art at university. And as Liz touched upon, soon after graduating, I set up an organisation called Blank Media Collective, which is where I started sort of moving from being creative in terms of making my own work to collaborating and working with artists to help realise their works. So, Parenthood for others, I'm sure everyone's having a slight giggle already, is a challenge. We all know it's a challenge. We do and we have always juggled, like many parents do. And I think what we've learned over this 5 years so far is that I guess what we're good at is working as a team.
Yeah, sometimes.
Most of the time.
I think I was incredibly nervous, if I'm honest, really, really nervous about having a child. And I remember really clearly the night Mark asked me out, he was straight in there. He was, so how many children do you want? You don't remember this.
I can't remember.
It's true. You're probably drunk. But we both said, oh, we'd like 2 children. And I think that's because, you know, Mark had a brother, I have a brother. So we were from families of 4. So that was like our ideal that had been set for us already. And then we kind of forgot about that conversation and went on with our artistic lives. And both of them gained momentum and pace. And we went from living hand to mouth, and I mean really poor, like, so we decided we wanted to live in Manchester, but it was the outskirts, and we didn't have a car. We lived in a 1-bedroom flat, which was, it was fine, wasn't it? But it, you know, we said yes to things that were silly. Like I remember once saying yes to, I'll not say which organisation, but singing my blog post. Luckily, it never saw the light of day. But you know, they paid me 100 quid for it, so that was huge. And we lived off government handouts, didn't we? For 6 years. And we got married. We did everything ourselves for the wedding. You know, we didn't have a big do, so to speak. And then obviously the conversation eventually comes round, right, do we want kids? And I was so incredibly nervous about changing our lives as we then knew it.
I think also for your practice as well, because it was really at that point really starting to sort of flourish and grow. And you, as you touched upon earlier, Liz was getting A lot of really higher profile opportunities, starting to travel internationally for work.
And I loved that. You know, I was in a place that I'd wanted to be for 10 years since graduating. So it felt very frightening to potentially make a decision, like we were in control of that decision, that would change all that. And it might not change all of that, but it might completely change all that. It was the complete unknown. And I think one thing I'm just going to lay out on the table right here, right now, is that I have severe anxiety. And not many people are aware of this because they see my practice as being very bold and energetic and joyful and very confident. I'm not. So I'm this weird juxtaposition of characters. And I suppose the reason why I make the work I do is to kind of instill that joy through colour and light, which are both mediums that are universal in their language of those two things. But deep down, I'm questioning everything. I think you kind of have to be a successful artist, like constantly asking yourself why, but also being very self-critical. And that was also part of the conversation of having children, as well as coupled with the anxiety of the unknown. So what was birth going to be like? What was labour going to be like? What was being pregnant going to be like? You know what? I never actually thought, what is having the child going to be like? Looking after them. I don't know how it was looking in from your point of view.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd been probably around children a bit more, and a lot of my friends had children from a sort of younger age than me. So I'd spent time with children and enjoyed playing with children. I think I'm naturally enjoy that. But I don't think I quite, as I'm sure many parents would say, quite expected or was maybe quite prepared for the responsibilities of parenthood, let's say.
I don't know, it took me, what, in all honesty, more than a year. Well, no, because we got married in 2014 and I was pregnant in 2016. So 2 years of pretty much thinking about it every day. Should I, shouldn't I? How's this going to look for me, for us? And I was quite happy to have conversations with people, and I think that's key. Some of those conversations were with my mum, some of those conversations with my dad or my friends. Some of them were with professional partners and collaborators, other gallerists or other artists who had had children, and their experiences actually really helped. There was a few ladies who'd had little ones who were at Rogue Artist Studios with me in Manchester at that time, and they were really, you know, babes in arms stage. And I thought, oh, it doesn't look that difficult. And the fact that they were bringing their children into the studio was lovely to see, wasn't it? It was really reassuring. Or they were just smashing it. Either one. And then I remember the one conversation was with my mum, actually. Obviously, we were talking as well. But the pivotal conversation was with my mum at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park. One day we went for a walk, and I grew up near the sculpture park. So it's always been a place I've gone throughout my life and made big decisions at, because it's just been there. And I remember the conversation with my mum was, you know, Liz, she said, do you want to get to my age and not be a mother? To not have had the experience of having a child, or to have a child who would now be grown up? Would you feel like you were missing out, or would you be okay? No, she wasn't trying to make a decision for me. She was just putting it on the table. And I knew the answer. I knew that I would regret it if I didn't do it. And I knew that the time was then. And so, as scary as it was, it meant that I had to put my fears to one side, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those conversations were incredibly important for both of us. And I know for other artists that I've spoken to, a couple that I worked with about 4 or 5 years ago, who are an artist couple, spoke to us and really, I think Francis was 1 maybe at the time, maybe a little bit younger, and they were sort of starting to ask those questions, and for us to be able to share our experience, even though it was quite early on still, I think was really important. And being able to be honest and talk about the challenges, but also talk about the great positives that there are having children and what that brings to your life. And I think for me, yes, we probably went into it quite naive, thinking, oh, we can
do it all ourselves.
Bring Francis to the studio. He can just lie there while we're working.
We'll take him to private views in a sling. What we were thinking? No, private views are at 7:30 when it's bedtime. What the fuck? You know, like you can't. In reality, you can't do that. We
tried a few times. I think early days we did a lot. So when Francis was 8 weeks old,
6 weeks
old, I ran an artist development program that we do called Studio Book in Salford.
No, it was at Old Granada Studios.
Yeah. And this was 2 weeks of talks, workshops, masterclasses led by 20 different speakers from all around the country.
We catered for them every day ourselves. I did most of the cooking at the weekends, and then we went home, nursed a baby and cooked every night. And we both really enjoyed it, and everyone was saying, how are you doing this? How are you doing this? But Francis was so mobile and so little that it, like looking back now, it doesn't seem hard. At the time, it didn't seem hard. I remember you just kept like walking around with him, like you just jiggle.
I was kind of introducing speakers with Francis on my arm, and that was fine.
And I was breastfeeding while serving cake. You know, it was like, you can do this. And I think advice we'd been given from other artist parents were that you just get on with it, take them with you, it's fine. And so we'd got this built in our head that we're going to do this ourselves. We were going to split childcare. We couldn't afford nursery. We also decided when he was about 2 months old that we probably couldn't stay in the 1-bedroom house. As fine as it was with a cot at the end of the bed, for now, that wasn't always going to be ideal. So we started looking for a home, and around that time, about a year before my dad had passed. So I'd inherited enough money to put down as a deposit on a house, which was a game changer for us, because before that we could have never afforded to become home owners or get a mortgage. So we were in a position to be able to buy. And so we moved out towards Macclesfield, which is where we are now, in Rayno, which is a lovely kind of semi-rural village, fresh air. And we were definitely thinking about what it'd be like bringing up a child out of the city. You know, we weren't thinking about the fact that the school had an outstanding Ofsted report, but it matters now. But when he was 8 months old and we moved here, it didn't matter so much.
I think just rewinding slightly, that sort of first sort of 8 months when we were in Manchester, we both had a studio, a complex called Artwork Atelier. I had an office studio space on the ground floor. Liz moved over probably about,
Rogue
months before.
No, Rogue was due to be evacuated by the artists on my due date. So we decided to get me out way before that.
Yeah. So Liz moved over to the same complex as me, literally right above. So her studio, your studio, was right above my office, and literally all you had to do was bang your feet and
bring me the
I'd
cake.
run upstairs.
It was good.
And at that time, we sort of thought, well, this is us. This is the place that we work, and we'll make it work. But then,
do you remember changing nappies on the concrete floor?
Yeah, it was freezing. It was not fun, but we just did it. But then we got the news that Artwork Atelier was going to close. As with so many studios around the country, the same old story, knocked down to be built for flats. And we talked loads about where we'd work. Would we find somewhere else in Manchester and commute? We just moved to Macclesfield. And then we started working from home. And I think that has obviously been hugely challenging, but helpful at times without that sort of commute and that pressure on having to travel to Manchester and back, or Salford and back every day.
I mean, our commute is literally those stairs. It takes a minute, and you know, it's super useful. We can nip out into the garden on our lunch break. The downsides are that you can't get big machinery in. I have to hire 2 shipping containers to store my artwork that's completely off-site because we don't have that amount of storage. When Francis wasn't at school, or when he gets back from school, you can hear everything, even though we are in a weaver's cottage. So we are on the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, ground floor, middle floor. So, yeah, so we can hear everything. So you can hear him having meltdowns when we are doing Zoom chats, and we would be sharing childcare. You could hear very clearly everything, and it could be very distracting, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
this is before COVID. This is before everyone else was doing it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think those challenges of working from home as a creative person, and having children or a family, we've seen it now so many times. It's been on the news with children running into the room on BBC interviews. It's kind of become the norm. And I think that's good, and that's really important.
I think that's good for you as a mentor, though, to artists, because I think quite a lot of artists feel nervous, or, oh, I have to get childcare whilst I have this mentoring session, or you don't. And I think it's important for you, being a parent, to have to say, no, you can have them on your knee with you. You can be feeding them if you want to, as long as you're, as an artist or as a human, able to concentrate on this conversation and it's going to benefit you, then we should keep doing it.
I actively encourage Francis to come up and say night night if I'm doing a evening talk or whatever, because it's about family, and that's important. And I think it's important to show that it is possible to be creative, run a creative business, whatever that is, as an artist or whatever role, and be a parent at the same time.
And likewise, I've been having evening chats with American commissioners, potential people who are going to, pay me a lot of money to make an artwork. And Francis has come up and said good night, and Francis is so cute. It's like, oh, they're mummy's friends. Yeah, they're mummy's friends. And I've had to kiss him, or I wanted to kiss him good night in front of them. So these people that, as is the case with quite a lot of my opportunities, you never hear from them again, ever. They're specking out, but you can't stop being a parent for the sake of those conversations, because then there are conversations where that's happened and they have worked out. So if people can't take me or us as we are, as artists, as mothers or fathers, and as humans, then they're not worth working with, are they? Because as soon as I enter a contract or a collaboration with someone, it is very much developed and staged around my family life, my working hours, school pickups. Oh, I can't do, you know, tonight's meeting because Francis has got football, so I've got to pick him up later. Whatever. People have to be tolerant of that, and that's their problem. It's other people's issue, not yours.
I think in many ways, I feel we're both fortunate but unfortunate. But fortunate because we both can be flexible with our jobs, and that's really, really important, and enables us to be able to say to one another, right, I've got a meeting at 3 o'clock or whatever. Are you free to be able to pick Francis up, or vice versa, and being able to.
Or sometimes, like, I'll see that you're stuck in a meeting or it's going to go over, and I'll go, oh, I'll go and get him, and I'll just jump on it. So it's just about juggling. But I think the biggest moment for me was when we'd moved here, and Francis was about 13, 14 months old, and we'd got this idea that we were going to divide our time really equally. Like, we have weekends, they are set as ours.
Weekends, well, we made a kind of deal, didn't we, that weekends and evenings were family time.
Sacred. And so the 5 days, 5 working days, we split, we did 2 days each, and then we did half day. And it just was, it wasn't enough, was it? It was getting really, really, really tricky, where we were starting to slightly bicker about, oh no, I need to work. No, I need to work. No, my work's more important than yours, but no, it isn't. And so Mark suggested we look into childcare. Now, just as well to mention, none of our families live nearby. The nearest family member is 1 hour and 20 minutes away. So it's not like we can just nip. It doesn't work like that for us. And in moving here, we knew that we were not going to be close to our parents, and therefore might be sacrificing a childcare option. Not assuming that they would even want to do childcare for us, but in any case. So yeah, you suggested looking into nurseries.
Yeah, I think it kind of got to that point where we started seeing how it was starting to affect our businesses and our work, and we just had to take a deep breath in and say, yeah, this is needed. I
remember the call to the nursery. You'd found a really good one, and I rang them. I was like, I just can't do this anymore. She was like, we get this a lot. And we went for a look round. We loved it. Francis settled really quickly. He started doing 2 days a week. So that was good, because that gave us each a full extra, no, I don't know. We had 3.5 days a week each. And just that extra day was glorious. Before that, obviously, as all parents know, they go down for a nap and you automatically run up to your computer and start frantically making calls and doing work. Whereas this, we were just a bit more relaxed. What I could not get over was the cost of it. It was just, oh God, eye-watering. To think that 2 days a week was costing us £300 or £400 a month, whatever it was. And I just saw it as money just going down the drain. And say if I didn't work or wasn't productive in that time he was at nursery, I would feel mega guilt. Like, I need to utilize this time absolutely in work mode. I didn't give myself any time off, did I? Whereas as time went on, I realized a few things. I realized that it was basically education, and it was social, and he was gaining so much other than us gaining time. He was gaining knowledge, he was gaining friends, and he went from not knowing any other babies or toddlers to having a dozen friends. And then the other thing I also learned, which Mark would seem to have mastered already, was that I could take time whilst he was at nursery and just have it for me, whether that would be just sat in the garden with a book or have a nap, whatever, that was okay. But it took me a while to do that.
And I think kind of fast forwarding to now, you went to school in September. That was a kind of complete change. And I think when we were first thinking about it last summer, we were like, oh, he'll nail it. He'll be fine, because he is used to going to preschool from 8 till nearly 6 o'clock every day.
I mean, he had long days, didn't he?
We pushed it. We picked him up, one of the last children, most days.
We were paying for it. Let's make the most of it.
And yeah, we thought, oh, he'll be fine. It's only like 9 to 3, so he'll be easy. In the first sort of half term, at the very least, he was exhausted. He was coming back at 3 o'clock, absolutely exhausted. And obviously we know now, and we realize how much they have to take in at that very early stage. And
I mean, he's a little one as well.
28 new children and new teachers, a new school, everything else. But again, that was kind of challenges that we didn't expect. Stupidly, probably I was curating a quite big show in Manchester in September, so I was sort of trying to rush back home to be back in time for Francis being back from school. And
we thought, can you remember, we thought we were going to send him to after school club straight away, which you can pick him up at 5:30. But they do a staggered start to school. So the first week they're just in for them like 2 hours in the morning, and then the second week they're in from first thing until 1, and then the third week 1 until morning until 3. And it was just like, oh my God, this is so difficult for childcare. I mean, it was only 3 weeks of her life, but it was just at this busy period for you, wasn't it? And we didn't anticipate his tiredness, and the fact that, you know, there was a routine every day for him, and he was, you know, he's literally gone from being one of the youngest in the class, a June baby, to not being able to read, not being able to write. He wrote his name on the first day of school, and it was like massive writing. Francis. Now he writes as letters, and he can read books to himself, and it's just insane that what they cover in that last early years education and reception. I mean, we're clearly proud of him, and we haven't even pushed him, have we? And we're not easy learners. I mean, I'm dyslexic. I don't think we excelled particularly at school, so it's quite a shock for us to see how much he enjoys school. But we're relieved that he loves it. But all of a sudden now we've got like 5 days a week to ourselves, and it's, ooh, what are we going to do? But you know,
it's the ups and downs, isn't it? And I think it doesn't matter whether you're an artist or whatever role you have in life and work. I think those challenges are always there.
Do you mean everything's a phase?
Yeah, everything is a phase, as everyone says. But I think from my perspective, I think I would always say everything can be workable, and if you've got someone by your side or people to rely on or whatever it might be to talk to get that support from, it is doable and it's possible.
Well,
so far anyway.
I think one of the most, I remember like the biggest teamwork we ever did was I had an artist talk in Stockholm when Francis was 5 months old, which I'd had booked in during my pregnancy, which, by the way, I managed, and I had a home birth by choice. And although I had super high anxiety throughout my pregnancy and ended up being coupled with a mental health midwife, which was the best thing that could have happened, in the end, it was okay. And because I hadn't considered what it was like actually having the child, then that became the challenge. Anyway, my, what do we call them? People who'd invited me to do the talk had said, bring the whole family, like you'll be breastfeeding, bring the whole family. So that was really inclusive and lovely. But I actually didn't want the whole family traveling with me. I wanted to go to Sweden on my own steam and just have that time being an artist. So I expressed milk like crazy, had a freezer full, tried Francis on a bottle, can you remember? And he took it straight away and I was like, yes, I'm going to Sweden. And I went, you remember? And you looked after it. It was only 3 days, but it felt absolutely monumental because it was my first proper work trip since having Francis. And I remember there was points in that trip where I was leaking milk, I was having to express milk and then tip this precious liquid gold down the drain. Ugh. But I got a tiny bit of freedom, and having you to watch my back and allow and enable me to do those things has enabled me to keep going. And so I have absolute praise. And I don't know how single parents do it. I actually don't know how you do it. And I have so much respect for you. Like unreal, I can't comprehend, because it's been a struggle. But you know, at the same time, he is a joy. And my mum was right. I didn't want to get to 60 and be without him. I think that's pretty. That sums it up.
Yeah.
we could talk for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think most people who have given the talk have probably said that they could talk for days probably on some of the issues and some of the joys. It was interesting what you're saying about being invited to Stockholm and being invited over with the family, because Natasha Caruana, who was in the first talk, she went over to France for a solo show over there, and she said the change in how you're treated and your family is treated when you go abroad is just so different to what you get here, and it's quite interesting that we're obviously still, we're just not getting it yet, right? In terms of galleries and institutions, we're obviously just with a long way to go, I think. I
mean, I could talk about that for hours.
Yeah.
I think the stories and the conversations that I have with artists through mentoring sessions are pretty horrendous. Liz and I decided not to focus on the negatives.
But also we decided not to tell anyone I was expecting. I never had a baby shower. I never had presents. I never did a big Facebook announcement because I was so afraid of people's reactions of female artist pregnant. Dun, 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 like, oh, it's going to ruin her career, it's going to ruin her body. And that was actually said to me. So by a quite a well-known gallery director, male. How sad is that, you know? And that stuck with me. I was 4 months pregnant when I was told that. And I thought, oh God, I've got to hide it. And I did. Yeah. And I remember getting enough confidence when Francis was 2 weeks old to post a picture on my Instagram grid of me with little Francis, and everyone was like, what? And I still feel really sad about that.
Yeah. Well, I shall move on to Lauren. So thank you very much. We will come back in a little bit. So moving on next to Lauren, who's going to speak to us tonight. She is a multidisciplinary artist, a curator, an activist, and the founding director of Spilt Milk Gallery, which is CIC, based in Edinburgh. Her work encompasses a range of materials and processes, ranging from collage, neon, and sculpture to socially engaged and curatorial projects. Her work is concept-driven, led by ideas and experiences rather than mediums and materials. Through her practice, she seeks to amplify the invisible, overlooked and undervalued experiences of mothering, care work and economic inequality, often highlighting subjects which are still considered to be taboo, such as childbirth, abortion and poverty. And her most recent work centres on the experience of single mothers and austerity politics. And tonight she's going to talk about her isolating experience, unfortunately, as a young single mother, and what led her ultimately to develop Spilt Milk, which is a matriarchal arts organisation centred on community collaboration and care. So I'll hand over to Lauren.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. It's quite weird having somebody read out your bio about yourself. Listening to that, it's like, oh yeah, that's me. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, I also could talk for about 5 hours on this subject, as some of you might already know. So my son is 17, so I've been trying to navigate this hustle for 17 years. And as Mark and Liz touched upon, things change as your kids grow older. Obviously, it's very different when you have a baby to then primary school, high school, then to teenager. Yeah, so it's totally about the juggle and kind of going with the flow depending on what's going on in your life and what stage they're at, I guess. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of briefly tell you a bit about my early experience, and then because that kind of sums up why I then went on to found Spilt Milk. So as I said, I've got a 17-year-old, and I had him when I was quite young. I was 20, and it wasn't met with joy and lovely pregnancy announcement. It was met with quite a lot of stigma and judgment, especially coming from a working class background. And you do get, well, I did get comments like, well, that's your life over. I thought you wanted to be an artist. Well, I thought, what about I thought you wanted to go to college. You'll need to give up on all that, obviously. So you do get, well, I did get met with a lot of that. And unfortunately, I don't think things have changed that much for young mums. But luckily for me, I'm pretty stubborn. And especially in my early 20s, I didn't like to be told that I couldn't do something. It would just make me want to do it even more. And, you know, I did have ambition. I did want to be an artist. Maybe I was naive, but I didn't see why I couldn't be. So I just kind of made it my mission that I was going to do it anyway. So when my son was still quite young, like 1-ish, I was trying to kind of build up a portfolio and trying to kind of get into art college. And the only sort of accessible portfolio classes I could go to were community education classes in a local high school. And at the time, they still had a creche facility because the teenage pregnancy rate was so high. So they had quite a lot of creches in high schools. And so I was able to go in, use the creche for £2, which is amazing to think of now. And then go along and do my, you know, still life drawing classes, painting, whatever it was. And that's basically how I built up a portfolio. So really, I always like to make that point, because if it wasn't for that, then I would never have had a start. Also, I was, you know, living on benefits. I had no money. So I had to be free or very cheap. Yeah. So anyway, I did build up a portfolio, and I got into study an HND in contemporary art practice at a local college, Edinburgh College. And at that point, my son was kind of nursery age. He was 3.5. So he went into nursery, and again, there was childcare grants. So I got 90% of the nursery fees paid for, which enabled me to then go to college. There was also other sort of bursaries available back then for further education, which I don't believe is available now. So again, you know, all these kind of things enabled me to go to college and actually get an education. And so on my HND, it was amazing. It was a brilliant experience. I was never made to feel like being a young single mum was a problem. All the tutors had kids and they were the same age as my son, and they would all like hang out together. We'd take them to exhibitions. They'd quite often come into the studio and just hang out. It was just totally normal. So I had role models as well. I was like, oh, these are artists with kids. This is amazing. This is going to be easy. So yeah, brilliant experience. And then at the end of the HND, we were all applying to, continue our education at art school. And at that point, I only had 2 years of student funding left, student loan left, because I'd done a previous course. So I was looking, the system's slightly different in England. So I was applying to colleges down in England because I could go into second year of a 3-year course and get my degree. So anyway, I ended up getting into Central St Martin's in London, which was like mind-blowing at the time. I was the first in my family to go to uni at that point. It was just like a huge opportunity, and it felt really exciting. And so off I went, packed my bags. I was like, right, cool, I'm going to go and live in London, be a single parent, be an art student. This is going to be great. Yeah, naive to say the least. I didn't quite comprehend how difficult it would be. It was a lot of, logistical things, running out of money very quickly, not having access to various support that I thought I might. The sort of housing situation we were living in wasn't great for a number of reasons. I didn't realise how long it would take just to literally do the school drop off and then get to uni and then have to leave to go and pick them up after school. There was no kind of after school childcare or anything available, and it was just a horrendous few months, to be honest. And after probably about 3 months, I was like, okay, this isn't going to happen. I need to give it up. Like, I need to go back, move to Edinburgh. And I should also mention that I did reach out to the university for help, and they were very unsupportive, and they were like almost looking at me as if, how dare I, come to St Martin's if I have these problems, if I have a child, and yeah, just terrible attitudes basically, which wasn't helpful. So anyway, what transpired? So after some very tearful phone calls back home to my family, my mum was like, you've got here, you've worked really hard, we're going to figure out a way for this to work, you're not going to give up. And so basically for the next 2 years, my son moved back to Edinburgh, and my mum and various other family members cared for him during term time. His dad was a bit more around at that point as well, so he was more involved. And they basically cared for him and enabled me to stay in London and get a degree, basically. And so I'd travel up every term holidays, summer, Easter, as many weekends as I could. I'd get an overnight megabus, which if any of you have ever done that, is not nice. But I just basically did what I could. So, I'd get an overnight megabus, come home at the weekend, be a mum, go back to uni Monday morning, and did it for 2 years. So it was really yeah, when I think back now, I'm like, how did I even do that? I don't think I could do that now, but you just do what you have to do, basically. And yeah, I'm glad I did. I graduated in 2012, so that was 10 years ago now. And then ever since then, I've been, moved back home to Edinburgh as soon as I graduated, basically, and then been navigating being an emerging artist and a single parent with lots of other issues, but we don't have time for all that. So, but yeah, so that was a kind of my early experience, I guess. And I just want to start sharing some slides at this point, if that works. So I just wanted to share this one piece because, so this is it's called a conflict of interest, and it's a neon that flashes between the words mother, other, her, and me. And I had developed this work in my last year at art college. So I should also say that I was making a lot of work about motherhood, and it was very patronized. I got terrible feedback. The tutors hated it. I got really negative comments about this piece when I was, you know, trying to explain it and do mock-ups and stuff. And it totally ruined my confidence, basically. I did something completely different, and it took me another 4 years before I actually made this. And I just got to the point where I was, you know, I'd been rejected for funding and things as well for this piece. And I thought, F it, I'm just gonna make it. Like, sometimes you just know in your gut that you just have to trust your own, you have to trust your own work. So eventually I did make it, and it was a completely pivotal point for me. It's now part of the Birthrights collection. It's a permanent collection. If anyone wants to ever see it, they're moving to Kent apparently, I think soon. But anyway, but what this did was it started getting shared a lot on social media, and it opened me up to other artists that were mums. And I was suddenly like, oh, right, it's not just me. I'm not the only artist and mother in the world, because that's really what it felt like. It felt like really isolating. Nobody was talking about this. These kind of conversations that we're having tonight just weren't happening. But this opened me up, and I started connecting with loads of people online. People were messaging me, emailing me, going, oh my gosh, I totally get this. Thanks for making this. Let's chat. And it was a turning point, basically. And that's when I sort of thought, okay, right, I need to connect more with these people. These are the kind of conversations I want to be having. I feel seen, finally. Like, I don't feel like I've got 3 heads. And so eventually that kind of led me to set up Spilt Milk, basically, because I needed that community around me. And so that's basically why I set it up. And it started off really small. It was like, it's going to be an exhibition, some workshops, some, you know, getting some people together with their kids and chatting. And it just grew and grew from there. So now we've got kind of core network of artist mothers that's gone really global. It's all, particularly over the pandemic, it's gone global. And then we've kind of got, we've got our exhibitions program, we've got monthly crit groups, peer support, mentoring. We're just launching some residencies, and we've got a community engagement program as well. Because we want to be benefiting mums in the local community as well. So there's loads going on. You can have a look at our website if you're interested, but I'll not go on about it too much. But so I guess over these conversations that I've been having with other artists, these are the kind of things that come up quite a lot. So it's barriers to participation. So these negative perceptions of art as parents, there being a stigma, but it's also the disproportionate impact of motherhood on women's careers. And then you've got all the sort of lack of flexible, affordable childcare, the freelance working, all these logistical things. And then there's a lack of value for mothering in society, and there's a lack of value for artists as workers, and that becomes a bit of a double bind. And then to top off, you've got this negative stigma around motherhood as an artistic subject. So there's a lot going on, and I need to tell myself that I can't solve all of these problems myself, although I would love to. But what we are trying to do with Spilt Milk is, all these kind of issues, the exclusion of mothers and mothering, is really rooted in these patriarchal and capitalist ideals, which the art world is founded on. And the traditional art world models are very hierarchical, they're very linear, climbing up the ladder. There's been a lot of conversations around ageism, which is a huge issue as well. You're supposed to be at a certain career stage by a certain age. So, I really believe that we don't need to, it's not about dismantling current systems, but perhaps making new ones. So I kind of see Spilt Milk as a matriarchal organisation, and it's circular in nature, and we try and focus on community and collaboration and care and empowerment and respect. And I've got a fantastic board, an all-female board, who really support me in this as well. And we're always we're always discussing these things and figuring out how we can do better in the way that we organise ourselves and just everything that we do. So I mean, I don't have I'm not going to go into like all the ways that a matriarchal structure actually works, because we don't have time, but it's kind of centering, you know, the maternal experience as valid is a really big point. And that's not to say that all artists who are mothers need to make work about motherhood, but it's just valuing it as an experience. Removing the power of the cultural gatekeeper. A lot of the exclusion is to do with people in positions of power not recognizing the experiences that, that are being represented in the art. So it's kind of keeping things democratic, removing competitive hierarchies, trying to always go for sharing and collaboration. So we've got things like a successful funding library in the within our network, and it's all about sharing tips for success rather than it being this weird secretive thing where nobody actually tells each other anything. And then number 5, obviously the most important, is the accessibility, and obviously childcare is a huge one. I very naively thought when I started setting up Spilt Milk, I was like, people will just throw money at me for like to open a creche because it's so needed and it's so obvious, not realizing that it's really difficult. That's why no one does it. But yeah, there's a lot of blue tape, and it's something that we're constantly figuring out how we can provide. But in the time being, we just try and make everything as accessible as possible and welcoming, like bring your kids with you. Yeah. So just to kind of finish off my last slide, I feel like I've talked very fast and given you lots of information there, but I just wanted to kind of try and end it on a positive as well, because it's not all negative. And this is something I'd love to do a longer session on at some point maybe, but I was thinking about artist-parent power mapping, because yes, a lot of my story is a lack of resources, and my own experience is as much about being on a low income from working class background as it is about being a mother. But I do have privilege, and I'm aware I've got a lot of privilege that others don't, and it's easy to feel like you don't have any power to change things, but it's really taking small steps and doing what you can. Unfortunately, I feel like current systems are not going to bend and change for us. A lot of the time it does take you getting up and doing something yourself. That's how things change. And yeah, but yeah, it's looking at, you know, what networks you do have. If you've got local art organizations or galleries, can you get in touch and say, can you have your opening at 4 rather than 7? Could you put a baby changing mat in the toilets? Such a simple thing, but literally nowhere does it. Just tiny things to make things more accommodating, basically. You know, family and friends, your own networks, it's valuing yourself and your time. If you don't value yourself and your work, then nobody else is going to. That's one thing I've learned the hard way. And then informal childcare arrangements is something briefly I'll touch upon, but basically when my son was in primary school, sort of 8, 9, 10-ish, myself and a few of my single parent friends, we couldn't afford, we were all working, like I've always had a day job as well as being an artist, and we couldn't afford the summer after school program. So what we did was we kind of banded together and shared the care of all the kids. And I really honestly think that everyone should do this, because it's basically free childcare. So what you do, if you can get 5 other parents or 5 other families, then you club together for 1 week. It means you have to have all the kids for 1 day, which can be absolutely hellish. Like you can have 7 kids running around your house for a whole day, but then they go to the next parent for the next day. So you have 4 days off of free childcare and you can work. And it was amazing. It was a lifesaver for me and all my other single parent friends as well. So I think, yeah, having to kind of, and artists are good at that, coming up with other solutions where the current systems don't work. And yeah, finally, use your voice and use your art. Again, I'm not saying everyone has to be making art about their experiences, but everyone has the power to talk about it and be open and honest about it. And I think that's the only way we're really going to change things, is if we keep having these conversations, keep talking about it, reduce the stigma, and yeah, normalize it. We're all human, as you said. And yeah,